with me is Danny Pinto. I've kind of just preambling, talking about how much I admire him. I'm terrible because they say never fanboy over the people you talk about, but I'm the worst. So, Danny, just sorry if I go off, right? I get a little bit weird that way. Danny you're doing something really interesting. What I really like, right, is that if you live in a diaspora country, right? So, Danny is in the US, in California. We're in Johannesburg here. And your connection to the national team, if you want to find information, is by and large going to be in Portuguese, which, I mean, you can speak good Portuguese, but you ideally wanted something that you can easily understand. But also what I like about your content, Danny, is how it actually speaks to me as a second generation. I wasn't born in South Africa. I mean, I was born in South Africa. My family's from Madeira. And it speaks to me from that point of view because I think there's a very different way in supporting the national team. I don't know any other way, but from living in Portugal and being from Portugal versus being somebody that lives out of Portugal, and in an even weirder way, the national team plugs so much into your identity, right?
Yeah, Paulo. The thing for me, I'm first generation. I guess outside of Portugal. My parents are both from the Azores. They're from Terceira, and there is something to be said about the connection that this national team and sports in general for anybody, but this national team has for those of us who are, first generation, outside of Portugal. And it's one of the passions that I have sports wise is this national team. And it's one of the things that helps connect me to, my parents' roots and background and culture. So I love it. I find it to be something that I'm very fortunate to be connected to.
And it's a weird thing that I can't always explain to people, to say that, so I support Sporting and I support Manchester United, and you have your own teams, and I know you have some teams in US sport, but there is a kind of part of me where the national team trumps everything else. You know what I mean? Is that weird to say?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, not at all, because there isn't anything like a national team equivalent like a soccer national team, I don't think.
Yeah.
Here in the States, we have basketball, we have baseball, they have their national teams in the Olympics, but it's not looked upon as big as anything in soccer. So even like our team, our soccer team here in the States, our national team who drew with Wales yesterday, I'm not tied to any club team in the United States. So when that national team gets together, there really is it's not hard for me to root for them or to root for all the players because I don't have any ties to a club team. Now with Portugal, my allegiance, sorry, Paulo, it's to Benfica.
Yeah.
But if a Sporting player were to score a winning goal in the World Cup, which obviously won't happen this year because Sporting unfortunately doesn't have any players. But you know what I'm saying. I don't want to dig at you too bad.
I totally
Paulo,
get it.
But I mean, if Pot was on the squad, and in the 92nd minute in the World Cup final, he was to score the goal that put us in the lead, put us atop, won us the World Cup, Pot might be my favorite player of all time. It's just one of those things that this national team does. When there is a cohesion that this team does bring to, I would say, the majority of Portuguese fans and Portuguese football followers. That during a World Cup, during a Euro, now they have this Nations League going on. I think we put club allegiances aside quite easily, and we all want what's best for the national team.
Yeah. It is really strange, and it wasn't always that way, but of course we didn't always have as good a national team. There was kind of a 30-year lull of where we were kind of not really there. I want to ask you, what was your first World Cup? Because, I mean, it's so weird talking to my dad because obviously they hold up the 66 generation. You don't really have anything till 86, and that wasn't the best. You hear about the infighting and the stories. And then we have this golden generation, this massive lull to 2002, and kind of like ever-presence since then. Not always the best performing, but there and giving us the memories and giving us the games. What was your first Portugal World Cup?
So my first indoctrination to Portuguese national team football was when I was 5 in 1986, that aforementioned team. And, I only knew about the infighting and everything later on, in reading books and stories and everything. But, my favorite player, for whatever reason, Paulo, was Carlos Manuel in 86. Maybe he was the only one that I could remember at 5. I don't know. But that was the first time that I ever remembered watching the Portuguese national team play on TV, and quite frankly, just being aware of them. When I first got into it was when they first got back into kind of like the spotlight of world football was the 2000 Euros with that golden generation. Everyone remembers that goal from Luis Figo from about 35 yards out that started the Portuguese comeback in that 3-2 victory against England. And from then on, as you mentioned, they've been in every major tournament since. They've made every World Cup since then, starting in 2002. They've made European appearances consecutively. Obviously, won the Euro in 2016, but I would say my first ever was 86. But like my first real taste, my first real passionate look for this national team was definitely in 2000 at the Euros.
So I tell this crazy story, and I think a lot of people identify with this, is that my father used to get, because obviously we didn't have the games on TV at the time, you could listen on radio because they would broadcast. South Africa was kind of cut off from the rest of the world at that point. So we would get transmissions on the radio because we could pick up the signal from Mozambique, which is like 6-7 hour drive from where you stay. So that's how you could listen to games back then. And all the old men would walk around with their little radios with a massive antenna to listen to matches. But every now and again, right? But every now and again, you'd get, guys would be up and down between Portugal all the time. And one of the things they'd bring was cassette tapes, like VH video cassette tapes of taped games. So if they were there for a month, they'd record games for a month and bring it back. So there was a mixture of club games, European games, and internationals. So you'd watch a game, and we weren't in this world of fast coming information. So you'd sit for a month watching a month's worth of games. It was like ages ago. You don't even know. Like, oh, there was a World Cup. I'm watching a game 3 months or 3 years later. And that's how we kind of would consume every now and again. And uncle would come back and bring you all the Bola magazines. So it was this kind of relationship and build up of it almost seemed mythical, like they didn't exist. And then later in the 90s, kind of satellite TV comes in, but my dad comes home one day with this massive parabolica that you got to point every time a cloud comes to now point it towards a different place to now watch a game. And it was on a trailer. I think this thing was half the size of the house. My mother wasn't happy. And it's such a nice story because now you just press a button. As we're talking now on my iPad, I'm busy watching the Denmark-Tunisia game. And it's it's so easy now, but that's such a nice story, and I think the same with you. We've got these stories of it feels magical,
Well, yeah, it's one of the things that connects us and connects, our parents and our grandparents before us to their homeland, whether it is Madeira or the Azores or mainland Portugal. For us, I'm 41 years old, so growing up in the 80s, there wasn't a lot of access here in the States to Portuguese football, to Portuguese television. Right around the time, and I think your timeline's about the same as my timeline in terms of satellite TV and trying to get newspapers delivered from Portugal, like A Bola, O Record, O Jogo. by getting those out to more prominent Portuguese areas in California and in the back east in New York and Massachusetts and Rhode Island, where the population is much bigger for Portuguese population of immigrants. So I just remember going to friend's house and just seeing kind of similar to what you said your dad brought home, just like this just huge satellite dish in the middle of the yard.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden, like we can't play soccer or football or baseball in the backyard anymore, because if you ding that thing, like the signal is lost forever. So it's one of those things where you did what you could to reconnect with home. Our parents would, and by proxy, we fell in love with their home and fell in love with their culture, which then made it our culture, because not only were we born into it, but we were made to not forget it. And it's one of the beautiful things about Portuguese culture is that the culture itself. And, I was very lucky to take my wife and my two boys to the Azores this summer and see them do what I did when I was a kid, when my parents took me. And it's just, there's a connection. Paulo, you said it a little bit earlier. It's something that sometimes it's hard to explain to other people. But in talking with you in 2 seconds, I can already tell the connection. Yeah. I could feel the connection to Portugal, and I'm standing in California, you're in South Africa, but yet there's a connection that took like less than a minute to establish. So it's, if you're not Portuguese, I'm sorry, folks, but it's one of those things where I love being Portuguese. I love having that connection to where my parents came from. Not everybody has it, and I think you and I, Paulo, are fortunate enough to have that, and we're proud to have it.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why when we launched off into this, I said, if I'm going to get anybody on the show, it's got to be you, because up front, before I came online with you, I introduced Seleção Pod and what you've been doing. But I think it's that. And I think I've kind of don't want to over egg just how, like I say, it's something you can't explain. But Seleção Pod, I find this, and now it's a community and it's a way of chatting, and somebody who's now, in my mind, become an authority. Maybe you want to tell everyone who's listening the Seleção Pod, your journey. You are available on all platforms. You're talking about your growth, but kind of like, surely you just wanted to start just to look for this connection, or was there something more to it?
Well, for me, I come from a broadcasting background, so I worked in radio here in California for, I want to say about, well, let's see, what, we're 2021 now, so about 15, 16 years, okay. Or 2022 now. So it's always been a passion of mine. I've watching, like, media itself has always been a passion. So I just remember growing up, especially during summer vacations, my sister and I would get dropped off at my avó's house. This is as Portuguese of a story to start with as it gets, Paulo, but my parents would drop us off in the morning. They would work, hardworking folks. They would drop us off at my avó's house on the way to work, and I would be at my avó's house during the summer every day. And my avó, not the most technically sound or most English or Americanized immigrant, very Portuguese. We talked Portuguese every day. And my way of being introduced to English was watching the news and watching soap operas and watching, all these shows with my grandma. And I just fell in love with media for some strange reason. I just enjoyed the medium of media. So fast forward to going to college, I had my own radio show. During college, I had an internship with a radio station, a sports station here near Sacramento, and I've never really kicked that bug. I've always had something of a find a way to be connected media wise. I've had multiple podcasts with friends and with other colleagues, but nothing ever resonated as much as this podcast, this Seleção podcast that I'm doing now. Nothing's ever kind of filled up my my media love tank, if for lack of a better term, than this thing does.
Yeah.
We started in 2018, about a month before the World Cup in 2018. It started really just to see what other people I could reach out to, because I knew that there were many people like myself, like you, that love the national team, but that there is something lost in translation sometimes, or the nuance of the Portuguese language that we just don't get being born outside of Portugal. And what I was trying to do is give a full, not a full, but just a more complete understanding of not only what was going on in Portugal, but obviously giving my thoughts on what was going on in Portugal with the national team. And what's happened is, having opportunities to talk to people like yourself in South Africa. I have connections in Portugal and in London, and this has grown into something a little bigger, I think, than I would have initially thought. But the message stays the same. It's about passion. It's about this national team. It's about connecting with those who love the national team like I do. It's not a love fest by any stretch of the imagination. There are times where someone in my position who wants to do a show like this needs to be critical of what's going on, and by all means, this national team can give us enough ammunition to be critical on many occasions. But this whole podcast was started as a passion project to connect with those similar to me in similar situations. And I just, I love where we're still doing it. I think that 95, I think I saw a stat where 95% of podcasts are 1 to 5 episodes long, and people just give up on it afterward. I just completed number 69, 70, because I don't do a weekly show because my shows are they revolve around the Seleção schedule. So if we have a 2-month break, guess what? I have a 2-month break. And I'd much rather just, instead of forcing content, I just let the content be the one that I instead of forcing content, I let the schedule be the content. So, if any big news comes my way, obviously we'll talk about it. But it's a podcast for the fans, and I try to get as many people on as possible. And because I do not like going solo, because I'd much rather kind of drive the ship and let someone who is more connected or more just a better person, for lack of a better term, to talk about the team and just to get another opinion, because my opinion is not the only opinion, and I respect others' opinions and have gotten into great discussions with those of us who are who have been on the show and on social media as well. And you're not going to make everybody happy, but at the same time, that's the whole point. It's just to have a discussion about things, and this is what this podcast has allowed me to do, and I enjoy it so very much.
So basically, you're not the Ronaldo of podcasting who can do it all by himself and doesn't need anybody else, as it goes.
Oh, I'd like to be, though. That'd be huge. If I'm the Ronaldo of anything, I'm sure there's a lot of dollar signs coming my way. But no, I'm not the Ronaldo of podcasting, Paulo. That's safe to say.
And listen, just as a podcasting aside, and Danny, I didn't realize you had a radio background. I think you and I have got more in common than we even know. But what Danny's done with podcasting is that to release the way he does and to have the success the way he does, it doesn't happen because the algorithms love, yes, all those things happen, but it happens because he's creating great content, and it's part of my routine. The second I see there's going to be a national team announcement, I already start watching my feeds. He's on, I listen to your podcast. I know you also put it on YouTube. I'm more an audio guy. But one of my things is, okay, there's a national team announcement out. What's Danny got to say about it? We're previewing a game. What's Danny got to say about it? Something bad happened in the game. Oh boy, what's Danny got to say about it? And like you say, when the criticism needs to happen, the criticism's going to happen. Let's actually now get into the game. We've done our love fest. That's awesome. You and I probably do a 5-hour show here if we can go on like this, right? Brass tacks, Portugal in the World Cup. A weird World Cup, let's be honest. We've already seen Danny wakes up the morning we record this, Argentina losing. So the first big shock out the way. It's going to be a strange World Cup because there is no team that's kind of the finished or finishing article. Everybody's either at the end of a cycle or at the start of a new one, except, dare I say, and putting things ahead, getting too far ahead of ourselves, Portugal and probably Brazil are in the best place of where there's enough guys who've been there and enough guys too young to make a mistake. But I do this all the time, right? I go, the logical side, we're not going to win it. Once you start seeing the players arriving, the other day, Danny, I looked to see how much it would cost me to get to Qatar for the World Cup final, just in case. Just in case.
You and me both, sir.
What's wrong with us?
Yeah, I was doing that, because before the World Cup, no disrespect to Qatar, I never fancied myself being a traveler there, but you put an international tournament there of the magnitude of the World Cup, and it's like, if Portugal was to somehow play a match on December the 18th, what would it cost me to get there? And I quickly said, you know what? I have a mortgage to pay and children to save money for their college degrees, and we'll watch that one in the old US of A in my house in California and call it square there. But yeah, you and I are in the same boat. I think we were silly to think that we'd get there, but obviously not silly enough to at least peruse the internet to see, like, what kind of a deal could I get on a flight to Qatar?
That's it. Hey, listen, at least you get your chance in 4 years' time. Hopefully, we had ours. So we had our World Cup in 2010. I want to tell a story quickly, Danny, and I think a lot of people listening, I got mostly Portuguese fans going to be listening to this, right? So 2010 World Cup, Portugal arrived on the Sunday. Okay, so I had tickets to group games, I had tickets to knockout games, all that. But word starts going around, and this is kind of like the early days of Twitter. The only sort of messaging platform we had was BBM, was BlackBerry. There wasn't much iMessage and no WhatsApp. So word starts going around that not only can you go, Portuguese were lining the streets from the airport. It's about an hour and a half drive to where they were staying. They stayed on the outskirts. People were lining up from the morning before to get their place to see the bus go past, right? And long people. I mean, RTP was flying helicopters, was a big thing. But then word gets around that there are tickets available to go watch an open training session, right? First come, first serve. But like, what a weird catch me if you can. Had to go to the town hall, find a guy called Robert who's going to send you downstairs. You have to answer a troll, a riddle from a troll. He's going to give it. And anyway, it's just a whole big complicated thing to get there. Me and my friends and family decide, listen, it's every man for himself. It's one ticket per person. It's not like I could go and get 20 tickets. Only one person gets a ticket per hand, and then we're going to go off. So lots of us try it. It's like an amazing race. You're running out. People are running in. It was quite crazy. Then now we're all driving out to the school where they were training. And those of us lucky, you could only kind of enter the perimeter, which is probably about 2 kilometers. I don't know what that is in miles, but 2 kilometers outside, and then you had to leave your car and walk, and you couldn't get there without a ticket. But people were finding ways to get into the school around it, sitting on rugby posts, climbing up to the grandstand. There were probably already about 1,500 people inside to watch this closed training session where the guys just walked out, kicked a few balls around. The only player who came out to actually take photos and sign was Eduardo. Remember the goalkeeper then? He was the only one who came to the players or to the fans, but they kind of stood there, kept their distance, did the wave. But from then on, every Portugal game was life-changing experience. I went to a couple, other people followed the whole way till Spain knocked us out. But when you watch this and thinking about what you got coming up, I'm like, man, I am so jealous to just experience something like that again. So you got a hell of a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, it's everyone talks about their bucket list, and the bucket list is to watch Portugal an international match before I make it hopefully upstairs if you catch my meeting.
Yeah.
I've been lucky enough to watch Ronaldo play when he was with Real Madrid. The club came to San Francisco and played Club America from the Mexican League, and Paul, it was as if it was written in the stars. It's his first season with Real Madrid. The match is tied 3-3. It's about the 87th, 88th minute. He has about a free kick from about 22, 23 yards, and Ronaldo, of course, hits it perfectly, wins the game for Real Madrid. It was amazing.
Gonna do it.
But absolutely, it's the World Cup being in the States and in Canada and in Mexico in 2026. It's on my to-do list. We'll just say that to make sure that we can get to the World Cup and watch Portugal hopefully qualify. Obviously, because the one thing that Portuguese people don't usually do is count their chickens before they hatch. And given the scenario that this national team loves to put us through, it's never easy. So I don't expect it to be an easy way to get to the World Cup. But hopefully we'll see the national team on my home soil here in 4 years' time.
Yeah. Maybe it's cheaper to get there, so maybe I'll save up for that one. I think that might be easier and cheaper.
Paulo, lodging is free. Just come to California, pal. We'll take care of you.
Nice. So this the World Cup group we find ourselves in. I don't know how much we talk about what Ronaldo's done. It's another weird thing that, do you find yourself going, what he's doing for the club really shouldn't affect the national team, to the point that these players are so enamored by him as teammates that it will bother them? What's your kind of take on that? Because you get media who wants to go, oh, it's going to rip Portugal apart, but I really don't see that at all.
I think there's still a lot to be seen on how it's going to affect the national team. So here's the quick and dirty scenario. If Portugal struggles, it's Ronaldo's fault because of the comments. If Portugal goes far, they've overcome the shadow that is Cristiano Ronaldo.
Right.
Me personally, I thought the interview that he gave with Piers Morgan didn't shine a very positive light on Ronaldo, to be honest. I've said this on my podcast. The one thing that I think Fernando Santos has lacked in terms of the last couple of years is just a sense of accountability for not getting the most out of this national team. And what I sensed in the interview with Cristiano Ronaldo is a lack of a sense of accountability on what has been just a bad move to Manchester United. I mean, last year he still scored 18 goals in the league, was made the team of the year for the league, but it just wasn't the same Ronaldo. Now, given last year he was 36, this year he's 37. There's a new manager. There's a lot going on with the club in terms of how the club's been managed and rightfully identified by Ronaldo since Sir Alex Ferguson has left. But what I want to see from my star player is, things may not be going your way, but just kind of say, you know what, It hasn't gone my way, this year so far. I'll keep working. I guess what I'm trying to have Ronaldo show is something that he hasn't shown much, which is humility. That isn't always a bad thing,
Yeah.
given
Yeah.
his superstar status. It's when you're on top as long as he has been, um, and not just like top five, top 10, like top one or two. There
Mm.
is a drive there and a motor that is unmatched by, I would say, 99.9% of this of athletes in whatever sport, whether it be soccer, football, or basketball, or whatever it is. But I don't know. It didn't strike the right tone. I
Yeah.
don't think for me personally as a fan of him. And but he's got two teammates from Manchester United on the national team in Diogo Dalot and Bruno Fernandes. People are making, I think, way too much out of a handshake in the locker room
Mm.
that the national team actually put out. So why would the national team put something out that was um, a quote unquote negative?
Yep.
I think he's easy to be. I think Ronaldo is easy to pick on. I think he is easy to be a target. Um, but to answer your original question, how it's going to impact the national team, I still think it just remains to be seen. And I think whatever happens, the media will drive the narrative no matter what it is. And I think the most important thing for him is just to focus on national team soccer, which is what he's going to do.
Yep.
And I think we'll get a good idea of the impact that he may still have on this national team with the first match against Ghana, because right now all the eyes of the world is on him, or are on him, I should say, given that interview. But can they, is it going to be the thing that lights his fire for one last time in a big competition? Maybe, we could hope. But I think the reliance of Ronaldo is something that has drastically changed over the last few years. And what I'd love to see is, Ronaldo being the best Ronaldo that he can be, while also getting the best out of the other 10 players on the field to give this national team its best chance at winning a World Cup.
Yeah, and I think there's a really simplistic logic that kind of came out of the Nigeria game of going, oh, well, Manchester United are better without Ronaldo. Ronaldo's not playing against Nigeria. Look how good Portugal are, and look what happens when all these youngsters are let off the leash, which Fernando Santos is never going to do no matter who's there. But it's also simplistic because I've seen Ronaldo play a much more a very different role than he does play at times for Portugal. If I think of the Spain games in the Nations League, he played a different role, and I think it's very simplistic to say it. But I want to talk about Fernando Santos. I think, like everybody, great fans, what he did for Portuguese soccer, for all the near misses, he gave us a trophy. But there is a sense that maybe it's gone by now with two tournaments too far, right?
Yeah, I think that following the European Championship exit last summer, that should have been the end. I really think that he should have been fired following the loss to Serbia in World Cup qualifying at home. I mentioned this to Tom Kundert from Portugal.net on my podcast, and Paulo, that match was the first match post COVID where it was a full house at the Stadio da Luz. It was the first national team match that
a fortress.
They have had matches before, but as we like to say in Portuguese, casa cheia. You put an egg. You threw up an egg, and you sat on a 1-goal lead for 85 minutes, or you tried to sit on a 1-goal lead. And yeah, for me, it's been he's just outstayed his welcome. It's again, thank him for 2016. thank him for 2019 in being the inaugural Nations League champs, whatever that means to other folks. It's an international trophy, and we didn't have one before for Fernand Sanch, and now we have two. But with that said, you also have to recognize when the time is right to make a change. And to me, with the quality of player that is now at the disposal of this national team, it's not 2016 anymore, where it was a very pragmatic, very just defend and counter way of playing football. This team has way too many offensive weapons and stars that a change of tactic, a change of approach, a change of philosophy was needed. So for me, a change should have been made, one or two cycles ago. With that said, he's the manager. There's nothing we can do about it. So, much like the team, we support the manager until he's not the manager anymore. That's my philosophy. It's like, I'm not going to root against Fernand Sanch, because if you root against Fernand Sanch, you're rooting against the success of the national team, and that just doesn't fly with me. And just to go back on something you were saying about Ronaldo, this Portuguese team does play better without him now. You know why? Because we have better players. Manchester United is playing better now without Ronaldo. Why? Because this year they have better players than they had last year. So there is something to be said about the ball moving a little bit more. I notice it, but are we a better team? There's not enough of a sample size, in my opinion, to clearly say, yes, we are, yes, we aren't, or no, we aren't, I should say.
Yeah. And to kind of wrap up the thought of kind of players and personalities within the national team, that if he can walk, Pep is playing. What do you think about that? That for me, of everybody, I kind of seen Pep playing for Porto. I'm going, it looks like he's finished. And I've written Pep off before, but I've also got this feels like this might be really a bridge too far. The other two, Ronaldo and Fernand Sanch, okay, fine, they've probably got a little bit more. I don't know. Pep, just to me, doesn't seem like he's going to be in there, but it seems like it's really a bridge too far now.
I was of the opinion that you still bring Pep to the World Cup, but you bring him in on more of a lack of a better term, a cheerleader kind of role.
Yeah.
His passion for this national team is unreal. And for someone who was not born in Portugal, that didn't grow up in Portugal, for him to be as passionate as he is about the national team when he puts on that jersey is definitely to be commended.
And that's what gives me, and that's what gives me a weird affinity to him, because it goes, like you can see that he's got even less of a connection, but I think that's why I've got an affinity, because I go, oh wow, he loves this country as much as anybody, and he's really got no link. I think his wife's Portuguese, but yeah, I mean that's so like great servant, phenomenal.
Yeah, and I mean he's in a similar spot to us in a way, because we have the connection to the culture from our parents. He has the connection. Being from Brazil, he speaks the language already, but it's different. But then he lives in Portugal, works in Portugal, and he gets called up. I mean, it's not that Brazil has ever made any many blunders in terms of national teams, but I mean they would have, in retrospect, would have loved to have Pep in the middle of their defense for the last decade or so. But with me, it's I'm just wary of him being fit enough for a tournament like this, when I'm not even talking about his age, even though his age does play a factor. He's 39, but I've always been of the opinion, I don't care how old you are, if you can do the job, you should be on the team. And my worry with him is not so much about him doing the job. It's just, can he last an entire tournament? And him being, he's got all these, they're not even huge injuries, Paulo. They're, it's a slight, knee strain here or a hamstring here, but they somehow last a little longer when you're 39 years old, and they appear a little bit more often when you're 39 years old. So, in terms of quality of player, there's no question that he should be on the team. I just have, I am just very wary of him being thrust into the starting lineup when he hasn't been playing well, or not even playing well, but been playing at all. He does have a connection with Ruben Dias. They have played together, but you have the Nilu, you have Antonio Silva as other options in case he can't go. But those two options are a natural defensive midfielder and a kid at 19 years old who just played his first international game for Portugal. So the options are not great in terms of, no, I wouldn't even say quality, just based off experience. But these are the selections that Fernando Sanchez made.
Yeah, yeah, and so a lot of the Portugal squad, in a way, I mean, we've seen the faces. There's not many, football fans will watch a Portugal team and go, okay, I know a lot of the players. I want to talk about some of the guys who could probably have a breakthrough World Cup. So obviously the first one coming in, I think he's going to replace Diego Costa in goals, replacing Rui Patricio, who has been a stalwart. I expected more from Patricio, but he has a goalkeeper who has been doing great things at Porto, linked with a massive move, and now probably going to be number one for the national team. A lot of pressure. What do you think?
Oh, there's definite pressure. He doesn't have a lot of caps for the national team yet, but he is. If you're looking for a textbook world class goalkeeper, potentially, Diogo Costa checks all the boxes. He's 6'4". He's huge in the box. He covers a lot of the goal very easily. His distribution, once he has the ball in his hands or at his feet, is phenomenal. That was one of the things that surprised me most.
Yeah.
When he was called, I don't watch as much Port games and matches as perhaps I should, but just his distribution out of the back is tremendous. And I was a little taken aback when he first got the start during the playoffs, but I think he's very much deserved the number one shirt going forward. And I was surprised it wasn't going to be Rui Patricio back then. José Sá at Wolverhampton in the EPL, I thought might have had an opportunity to finally get his shot, but I mean, Diogo Costa has done a phenomenal job for Port and hasn't been asked to do a lot yet for the national team, but based on club form alone, he might be that next Portuguese star who cashes in maybe as soon as next summer to a big club, and it could begin right here at the World Cup.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's got all the potential to be a breakout star. It's going to be weird not seeing Patricio. He's been Mr. Reliable, but maybe not Mr. Spectacular. Kind of, you don't want your goalkeeper to be noticeable, but I think a modern goalkeeper does different stuff. And then two more youngsters I kind of want to touch on just before we start wrapping up. Rafael and Joao Felix. Listen, Fernando Sanchez is not playing both of them. He's going to make a selection. They kind of sit in the same area of the field. Rafael had a phenomenal season and a half at AC Milan, and then we've got our poor child in his gilded cage, Joao Felix. Part of me thinks a lot of his problems are of his own making, but let's talk about Rafael. Let's talk about the two. If you have to go, I got these two, could be generational talent. Joao Felix is kind of getting to that age where he needs to start proving what people think of him. But if you've got those two, and assuming Fernando Santos gets brave, who do you go for?
I would go Rafael Leão, based on form. But I will say, and again, very small sample size, I thought João Felix was very, very good in the Nigeria match, the friendly last Thursday. So if we get that João Felix, Fernando Santos' choice or decision becomes that much tougher. Again, it's one of the things like Ronaldo wasn't on the field, so you're
Yep.
allowed. These guys are allowed to do a little bit more, maybe play a little bit more free because the attention that Ronaldo brings is not on the field, and you get to maybe play a style that you're more naturally comfortable with. But if they're both in terms of top of their quality, um, it's a hard decision. I guess I'm just going to sit on the fence on this one, Apollo, and just if they're at the top of their game, I think it's a tough decision. But solely based on form right now, I think I would go with Rafael Leão.
Yeah, I think he kind of gives you, there's a sense that you know what he's going to do. Joao Felix can go from being the most phenomenal player to absolutely stinking. And you know what? He's shown so far that he's good coming off the bench. I think it's the position he's caught at Atletico. Sure, you want to start, but when you come off the bench, whether it's because you read a game or whether you just want to prove me wrong, you're doing well off the bench. So, what am I what am I supposed to do?
But the funny thing is that I think for this national team, I think he's best served starting instead of coming off the bench. If I had to start one, I would start João Felix. If I had to guess who would be best off the bench, I think it would be Rafael Leão, because I just think that his main trait is speed.
Yeah.
And if you have someone come on like him in the 65th or 70th minute, that's going to possibly wreak havoc on the defense. Now, in terms of meriting a start, again, if based solely on form, it should be Rafael Leão. But in terms of how you want to provide attack, how you want to go at a certain opposition, you could have Rafael Leão in your back pocket, and like I said, bring him on maybe for a guy like João Felix, or heaven forbid, Paulo, maybe bring Cristiano Ronaldo off in the 70th minute. I mean, I know I'm talking sacrilege here, but I mean, these are the times we are in, so we have to make the best decision for the national team. But yeah, they're two great quality players, and again, it's the difference between 2016 and now, where offensively there are just so many more options for this national team than there was 6 years ago.
Yeah, and you said such an interesting thing about the pace and the speed, because we kind of lack that out and out pace without Rafa to bring off the bench, anymore, and Rafa Leão gives you that option. It is a little bit of a worry that you just need someone to do that, because you saw Rafa come so many times off the bench and just completely disrupts people with how quick and direct he is. Of the, we got a lot of talent. Listen, we haven't even touched on Bruno Fernandes, Bernardo Silva, etc., etc. If you had to look through the rest of the squad of the players we've not spoken about, who is somebody to kind of go, let's look out for him in your mind, that's going to go either really affirm what we think of him or completely change, say, wow, I didn't realize he had that in the locker?
In terms of we knew what we had in him, I'm gonna go with João Cancelo. He unfortunately picked up COVID.
Yeah.
During right before the start of the Euros last year, and Fernando Santos made the what I characterize as the unwise decision of just dropping him totally, and not giving him a chance to go through the protocols and rejoin the team in the knockout stage. And I thought that his presence or his lack of presence in the squad was never more felt than the loss against Belgium in the round of 16. So the one that will confirm how good he is, I think, is João Cancelo. The one that can, it could be the two that we just talked about, Paulo. I think it could be Rafael Leão or João Felix. If Rafa's not there, Diogo Jota's not there, Pedro Neto is not there. In terms of attack, you have Ronaldo, you have João Felix, you have Rafael Leão, you have Ricardo Horta, Gonçalo Ramos, and
Yep.
I'm missing one. I don't have the roster in front of me, but those guys, Leão and João Felix, they could be the two breakout stars on the offensive side of things for Portugal if given the opportunity. So, yeah, those would be my two players to look for in terms of breaking out. I mean, the talent's all there.
Yep.
Everyone around the world knows it, but it hasn't been done yet in the Portuguese shirt. So, we could see that this summer or this winter. Gosh, yes, it's not here. It's in the States. It's the winter. So
It's summer.
my
Listen,
apologies for that.
no, I'm not. So every winter we watch and we have to kind of like watch indoors. And so it's summer, it's going to be outside. We call them brides, barbecues, but it's going to be a summer World Cup for us. So it is our, so we can enjoy that. Realistically, how far do we get?
I'm of the opinion that if Portugal wins the group, and if everything goes the way it's supposed to go, which as of this morning
Yeah.
or this afternoon, whenever you watch the Argentina game, if it goes chalk, as we say here in the States, if it goes the way it's supposed to go, I think that Portugal have every opportunity to make it to the semifinals.
Yep, I'm with you.
I think if they were to get through the round of 16 and find themselves against a team like Belgium, as you know, we lost to them last summer, but I don't think it was by any stretch of the imagination a dominating performance by the Belgian side. I don't rate the Belgian side actually very much.
No, me neither.
Being ranked as high as they have been for as long as they have been, I just don't think that they've done enough to merit being ranked number one and in the top three or whatever it is that they have been for the last 4 or 5 years. So that would set up potentially a matchup with France or with England in the semis, and we saw what England did against who was it, Paul? Whatever.
Iran. Sorry, it was
Iran. Yes, it was Iran. Yeah.
Saw Carlos Queiroz on the side looking very angry with Iran.
Well, hey, Carlos Queiroz. Well, that's another show for another time, I think. But
Yeah.
you could see England in the semis. You could see the defending champions in France. Again, on paper, this national team should have a good shot against anybody around the world. It's just about playing in a cohesive, believing way that has, I think, lacked a little bit in the last year and a half, 2 years. But we'll see if somehow the magic of what is likely Ronaldo and Pep's last World Cup, maybe that is a galvanizing piece of this national team, not solely just for them, but obviously for all 26 involved in the staff. But you just got to find something to believe in and something to drive you, and hopefully they find that in this World Cup.
Once again, we're going full of belief, Danny. It has been phenomenal talking, like I say, fanboy moments. It's been so cool talking to you. I reckon we could talk for hours. If you want to hear more of Danny, it is Seleção Pod everywhere, right? We'll drop all the links in the show notes, but it's Seleção Pod pretty much wherever you want to look, right?
Yeah, seleçãopod.com, at Seleção Pod on Twitter and on Instagram. We have a Facebook page. Just search the Seleção Podcast there. Just facebook.com/Seleção Pod. Yeah, we're everywhere, available everywhere on all podcasting platforms, and we also have a YouTube channel as well where I conduct a lot of my interviews as well. So we're everywhere, and yeah, Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and we need to get you on the Seleção Podcast too, my friend.
Looking forward to it, man. Anytime, Danny. I look forward. It's going to be a crazy World Cup, and I look forward to more chats. And thank you so much for helping me launch this inaugural spin-off of the working title FC podcast. I really do appreciate your time, mate.